We want to welcome in our next guest. He's a senior fellow with the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, Behnam Taleblu. Always great to see you, Behnam. Let's talk about the alliance. World's changing, obviously. President Trump's first term versus now Middle East trip. We saw there's really this push. They don't want anymore to be exporting terrorism. They want business deals. They want a new generation here where they can be involved with U.S. trade in a very big, meaningful way. But you have Iran and you have ties to North Korea, to China, to Russia. Back in March, Keith Kellogg said this didn't exist during President Trump's first term. The ties were greater. But in another way, the Middle East was much different, and there's a reshaping going on. So when you have Israel's preemptive strike tonight, talk to us about the opportunities that this has going forward for more stability in the region, more peace for the region, and where Netanyahu and President Trump have this relationship to actually be facilitating this remarkable time. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a pleasure to be back with you both. Listen, I think the Islamic Republic is rightly scared because they sense that trajectory that you have put out here, that they had a vision for the Middle East. The vision was very much a revisionist one, an anti-American one, an anti-Israel one. And then there was the other more stability, pro-business minded, pro-engagement minded one that you saw from some of the more moderate states, like the Arab states of the Persian Gulf that recently hosted President Trump. I'm talking Saudi Arabia and the UAE, for example. And you have two conflicting visions of what a regional order could look like. One, quite literally trying to use their national resources to target the only Jewish state, and the other actually trying to build bridges, political and economic and even security bridges with the Jewish state. And while today's operation by the Israelis, or last night, depending on where you are, operation by the Israelis has been reported as a unilateral operation, if this is followed up with strikes that are actually going against the regime leadership, there's been lots of talk about the military leadership that has been gutted. It almost looks like Israel may have done a 2.0 to what it did with some of Hezbollah's military command and control just south of Beirut in the month of September of 2024. And if there is like another uprising, as there have been strikes and protests across Iran for years now, if you actually have that opportunity, if you have the convergence of those two things, then potentially you would have a drastically different Middle East. But the big hurdle there is what's left of that command and control right now that has every intention of not letting stability and prosperity and economic integration spread through the region. They have every desire right now to have havoc and fear and chaos spread through the region. And certainly they're not going to be licking their wounds and sitting back. They're going to be looking for finding a way to escalate, to save face, but in a way that necessarily doesn't allow them to lose their head. And that's why it's critical here that the U.S. does not waffle. It'd be very interesting to see what happens if even reportedly nuclear negotiations are still on at Sunday at this point, or even if there's much of a nuclear program left by that point in time. But this is a drastically different, this is a big, let me just put it this way, this is a much more cataclysmic, even though everyone always talked about a potential strike being a matter of when and not if, given the U.S.-Iran crisis and the Israel-Iran crisis. Yeah. This is really has the potential to be a game changer, but much depends on how and where the Islamic Republic responds and what America's role will be in making sure Israel is fully defended, and also what role the Iranian people might play in helping foster a drastically different order by helping to flip the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, who was long looking to pursue the world's most dangerous weapons.
Absolutely. On the other hand, let's explore some of the diplomatic angles for the days ahead, because I hear you're absolutely right. There's going to be a lot of allies of Israel who believe there's a new day in the Mideast and this state sponsor of terror maybe has been decimated. And then there's Saudi Arabia, which, as I see, has just put out a statement in the last couple of minutes saying the kingdom expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of what they call blatant Israeli aggression. They condemn what they call heinous attacks and affirm the international community and the Security Council at the UN bear a great responsibility to halt this aggression. Now, we know the UN Security Council never misses an opportunity to go after the state of Israel. But my question is, there are going to be critics. I mean, Saudi Arabia wanted to normalize relations with Israel not too long ago. There was a new day that some were saying about that. And now Saudi Arabia is saying, wait a second, this is too much aggression. As Israel says they're going to continue this for days, Behnam, what do you think about the UN Security Council? Saudi Arabia, maybe others stepping up and saying not so fast.
Well, indeed, not just Saudi Arabia, but that's really like the crown jewel of the GCC. That's the Gulf Cooperation Council, or many of the Arab states of the Persian Gulf. These folks have really been hedging for many years now on the Iran issue, frankly, because Washington, they felt on a bipartisan basis, hasn't had their back since the fatally flawed Obama-era nuclear deal that sunk us deeper with respect into this mess. And they believe that as Washington waffled and played partisan politics, and the Biden administration came back in again, and even the Trump administration in term one didn't necessarily have their back when it came to Iranian missile strikes on Saudi territory, let alone some Houthi missile strikes on Saudi territory. This is what you do when you live in a crazy neighborhood. The Saudis, unfortunately, normalized diplomatic relations with the Iranians in 2023. We're still here now in 2025. They are yet to normalize diplomatic relations with the Israelis. Much of that now vis-a-vis the Israelis has to do with the post-October 7 Middle East and the Arab order in the region, particularly with what may happen in Gaza. The Saudis, though, have been focused internally, as have many of those more prosperous GCC states that are yet to normalize relations. And they are worried about their own internal situation and their own internal economies. And they know that they live in expensive glass towers, but that the Islamic Republic is not a power that builds in the region. It's a power that destroys in the region. So in a world where those traditional partners of ours, like the Saudis, were on track to do something positive to really flip the region and move in a much better direction, given the growing military, nuclear, terror, drone, missile capabilities of the Islamic Republic of Iran, they hedged, and they thought it would be cheaper and easier to accommodate and placate the Iranians. That's why, President Trump's first trip to the region in 2017 contrasts drastically with his second trip to the region in 2025. Because in 2017, those GCC states, those were the front lines of maximum pressure against the Islamic Republic. Fast forward to 2025, and these states have been hedging for a few years. Those states are the front lines of trying to engage in some kind of diplomatic game, not because they love the Islamic Republic, but because they're trying to avoid fire. They're trying to avoid being targeted. And they don't believe that their traditional partner, their traditional patron, the United States of America, would have their back. And I mean, just look at what the American people have been voting for. Very different people since the second Bush administration, but almost all with the same message of doing less, not more, in the Middle East. So while I understand where the Saudi, condemnation is coming from, I'm still critical of it. I also can tell where in the larger geopolitical picture this is, given their proximity to the Iranian threat, given the fact that the Iranians have said that if there's a American response from countries that host bases, that the Iranians would directly target those countries. This is a dicey neighborhood.
It sure is. And your comments, well laid out there. And also that breaking detail that there is a U.S. official, not named, but saying they hope to hold nuclear talks with Iran on Sunday, according to Washington. We will see. So much remains to be unfolding. Behnam Taleblu, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really good to have you with us.
Pleasure. Thank you.